If you've been watching the new season of Love is Blind, you might have been as surprised as I was to see three men, Marshall, Kwame, and Brett, talking about their feelings to each other in a very vulnerable way. It's a sight we don't often see. But why are healthy male relationships such an anomaly? Joining me to talk about it is Devan, Seth, and host and producer of the Gents Talk podcast, Samir Morani. Thank you for coming, all of you. You know, Love is Blind, it was an interesting conversation between men, but also the fact that they were black men. And right now we have three men of color on the show to talk about this right now. We need to see more of it, because that's exactly what they were talking about on the show. We don't see men of color, we don't see black men having these conversations. So, Samir, I'm going to start with you. Talk to me about the moment that you decided to start thinking inward and start being vulnerable and start maybe checking into your own mental health. What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. It started right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually. I had just split up with a long-term ex. And all of a sudden the lockdowns happened, and here I am sitting in my condo sort of looking at this big empty space thinking to myself, I don't know who I am anymore, and realizing that I had to really dig deep and pull out all of the things that I became over the years and really try to understand where things went wrong, where I could have shown up better as a man, as a partner, but also what kind of man did I want to become. And I did it through two things. One, would my younger self look at the current version and be proud? And would my future self look back and be proud? And if the answer was no to either of those, I had a lot of work to do.
Wow. Those are good questions to ask yourself.
Awesome.
You know, you've done about 39 episodes so far.
Yep.
When you speak to men, what is the most common mental health issue that comes up again and again?
That vulnerability is weakness. A lot of men feel as though in order to convey strength and confidence and bravado, that they can't show their emotions, and that's a complete fallacy. You can be a strong, confident, powerful man and still show your emotions, still show that you're having a bad day, that you didn't get the promotion or your relationship is on the rocks, and no matter what that is, it doesn't take away from who you are as a man. And I think a lot of men struggle with that, because once they get to the point of feeling the need, all the emotions are coming up, they're just trying to suppress it because they feel as though for their entire lives they've been told, man up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that message comes from so many different places.
100%.
So it's not surprising to hear that. Dev, I want to talk to you, and I'm so happy you're on this panel with us right now. Why do you think it is that men have a hard time, and not to generalize, but a lot of men have a hard time talking about their feelings? And do you think that culture has a role to play in it?
Absolutely. So I can only speak from my experiences, but I grew up in a household where we didn't share our feelings. We didn't speak about what might have been bothering us. My mom encouraged me, but with my dad, he was very, when I look back, he was more of a colder figure. And it's taken a lot of work over the years and a lot of vulnerability to break down some walls between us. Culturally, where I come from, the man is the one in charge of the house. The man is the person that takes care of everything. That's where the security comes from. That's where the financial security comes from, all of that. And you can't show chinks in your armor. I was talking about, when I was on the Gents Talk podcast, that it's okay to not be okay. And I find a lot of fulfillment coming from being vulnerable these days. You know, I find that there's a distinction between Devan and Chef Dev, and that's what I was explaining on the show, is that being Devan is manageable, but being Chef Dev isn't always manageable. Like, you know, I get approached in the grocery stores and at the shows all the time, and it's like, sometimes I'm just not in the best mood, and it's okay for me to not be in, it's okay for me to feel the way that I'm feeling, as opposed to putting on this facade and acting. So, long answer to your question, but it wasn't promoted as a kid, but it's my responsibility now to do something about it, and I'm doing something about it, to lead by example and be a beacon, a man of color, talking openly about his feelings for the youth.
Beautiful. That's so nice. Really good. And it's not an easy transition to get there, so it's good that you're here. Seth, I want to talk to you a little bit about your friends. First of all, do you have friends? Do you have male friends that you can lean on? Dev's your friend.
Absolutely.
Have you had, as you've gone through life, do you find that the friend thing has fallen off, or do you still have a tight group that you can lean on?
You know, I've actually become more intentional about my friends that I hang out with, and I think especially over the pandemic, my oldest friend that I met first when I came to Canada, him and I started a Google Calendar, and we actually keep each other accountable. We track our workouts.
Oh, nice.
We track our workouts so that, we know, hey, you're falling off. Get
Yeah.
back on it, right?
Yeah.
And we've been having a lot of FaceTime conversations. He's the guy that I trust. And, being open and vulnerable with him, I know I can do that because there's that history, there's respect, and there's trust there, right? So I think friendships play a huge role. I think in modern society, I think we're sort of losing that like male bonding that I think a lot of like cultural tribes have. I think the males bond through release of vasopressin, which is going through tough things together, right? Women bond through oxytocin, which is sharing of feelings and talking. Men bond through going hard things together. That's that kind of hunter-gatherer sort of mentality of like, hey, we're going to work out, we're going to do a cold plunge, whatever it is, and then we're like, hey, I got your back, you got my back. It's that, it's being able to rely on each other. And I think having friends like that is really important.
What do you think would get men back to the place where they would have that relationship with going through tough times with guys together so they could bond? Like, what do we need?
I think rites of passage. I think if you look at a lot of traditions, there was ritualized rites of passage where a boy becomes a man. You go out, the elders lead it. There's some kind of ceremony that happens, and it's that you go through it together. And then you come out on the other end, you're a man. You're now part of the tribe, right? I think in modern society, we just don't have that.
We don't have community in
we
the
don't
same
have
way
community.
we
You don't
had
have
community.
sports in the same way. It's it's more sort of video games and individual. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Samir, talk to me about how the men that you have been talking to on your podcast, how they feel about social media. Do they feel that social media is pushing a lot of toxic masculinity at them?
Absolutely. So social media in and of itself is a tool, and it's how we use that tool to amplify certain messages. And for a long time, social media was used as a platform to amplify a certain ideal of what a man is. The one that has the fancy car, has the jewelry, has the women, the houses, everything. But on the flip side of that, you can use social media to promote a positive masculine narrative, which is showing vulnerability, having those open conversations, having real friends, and going from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about women because I feel like we're part of the problem. Are we part of the problem? It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. We are, and it's okay to talk about it because we all play a role in the patriarchy. The patriarchy isn't just men playing out the patriarchy. The patriarchy is a system, and it's a system that has so many different pathways, and we are all involved in it and perpetuating it. So what do you think is the role of women in this whole idea of men and mental health and digging into their vulnerability?
I think it's just creating a safe space for the men to be able to share.
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of men have this fear, this inherent fear that if they share too much of themselves with their partners or with a woman they're interested in, that the woman will suddenly see them as weak or not the powerful man who can look after her. It's this, again, a fallacy within ourselves that we have to reconcile, but there is an exterior part to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And a woman can play an integral role in creating that space for the man to feel okay being comfortable, so that when they do go to share, they don't feel like, all of a sudden she doesn't see me the same way.
Right. So I hear this coming up a lot, the safe space. What do you need to feel, Dev, I'll send this to you, what do you need to feel safe in a relationship, in a conversation? What makes you feel safe?
A safe space for me with my partner or with a partner or with a friend, whoever it is effective communication and listening.
Yeah.
And for that person, the same way I am, or I try to be open-minded, to be compassionate, and to be accepting, and to not criticize. These insecurities, and I can only speak for myself, so the insecurities that I have growing up as a kid, I never want to show anybody that I'm fearful of anything. I never want anyone to know that I don't know the answer to a cooking question. It's okay to not know everything, and it's okay, but you want to be able to share that in a space where you're not, that no one points a finger at you or makes fun of you or something like that. So just open-minded, compassionate. If
you could, Dev, go back to your younger self and sort of say something to your younger self about your mental health, or advice, what would you say?
For some reason, I get asked this question.
Do you?
A lot, and the answer's been the same recently. I would tell my younger self not to care so much what people think about me.
Yeah.
I spent so many years growing up people-pleasing, trying to make people like me out of insecurities for myself. I need to be right inside. And today, I'm doing a better job of doing that.
Yeah.
Once this is all good inside, no external validation can fulfill me anymore.
That's right. Seth, what would you tell little Seth?
Don't watch porn. I
Yep.
think so much of how we view the male-female dynamic is, especially for young boys and girls, I think, but especially I think for myself, I think so much of that dynamic is dictated by what we see. And I think we're highly suggestible at that age and in those states. And I think I would just say, just don't watch porn. There's nothing good in it.
That's a whole other segment.
It's a whole other segment, and we'll get into it on Cityline. We'll figure out a way to do it at 10 a.m. across Canada, coast to coast. We're going to have this conversation because there is a bit of a crisis happening based on porn and porn watching and what we're getting from that, and even the road that porn has taken in more recent years. So we'll figure it out, folks, and we'll get into it because we get into everything on this show. Thank you to the three of you for your vulnerability.